All right, welcome back to another podcast. This week we have Galen Karlan-Mason. He is the CEO and the founder of GreenChoice. Welcome to the program, Galen.
Thank you, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Let's talk about this great company. This is a company that basically helps consumers make a better informed decisions about their food. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is fair. It's really for us about making it easy for you to find the foods that meet your dietary needs, health goals, and lifestyle values. And it's not an easy world to navigate. We've got tens of thousands of choices in the average grocery store and many, many claims, not all of which are very honest. And so our our work was really founded out of the idea that it should be a whole lot easier for the average person to make informed choices and be able to vote with their dollars.
Yeah, when you say some of it's not very honest, I had the CEO from Malk Organics, which makes plant milks. And we talked a lot about what's on the front of the package and what's on the back of the package and how those
Mm.
can differ greatly.
Indeed, they can, and you
I
got to
just
look
did
at the
a
back.
exactly. I just did a video on my social media where I that had a coconut water on the front that said just still coconuts doing their thing, and then you turn it on the back and they got sugar and ascorbic acid and vitamin C and all this other but on the front it just says, you look at the front, it's like, oh, it's just coconut water, but there are a couple other things that if once you get to the back.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about first. I want to hear what your story is of how you started this company, why you started this company. I understand that you suffered, as I did for quite a while with some food allergies. Is that fair?
Yeah, well, they've changed over the years. So as a little kid, I grew up in a small little town in southern Vermont, and I had a mix of allergies. Like second grade, I started breaking out in hives, and they gradually got worse and worse. And after a ton of testing that we did with our naturopathic doctor, we found that I was allergic to a handful of things. Um, Rice and gluten being two very notable ones. And at that time, gluten free was not a thing. You did not have the choice you do today. So it was difficult. My mom was really, bless her soul, was had a task to try and feed me as a kid healthy food. I was a very active kid, an athlete, and she was trying to shop with her values and was really conscious around what was in our food. Outside of my allergies, she was a therapist, and so she would think about she had this understanding of food as medicine before it was a buzzword, and understood that food doesn't just impact our physical health but also our mental well-being. And so there was not many artificial ingredients or dyes or added sugars in the foods that I was eating as a kid. And at the same time, it was complicated because we had to check to make sure that these foods didn't have ingredients that would give me a reaction and make me sick. And over a period of 4 or so years, with the help of our naturopathic doctor, I gradually reintroduced foods that I was allergic to and was really able to overcome my gluten allergy and my rice allergy and many of my other sensitivities. So I eat those foods today. But fast forward a couple decades later, I was a college student playing soccer. And one morning while at practice, I started to feel my lip get tingly. And in a matter of an hour, I was in full anaphylactic shock. If you've seen the movie Hitch, where Will Smith's face blows up,
Yeah.
that's what my face looked like. It was pretty gnarly, and that turned out to be an almond allergy. And I'd eaten almonds my entire life, but I now can't eat almonds because I have full anaphylaxis to it. So they've changed over the years, and throughout that time, it's always been a factor in how I shop. That and the lens that my parents gave me. My mom being very mindful of what's in the food, and then my dad was an environmental science professor actually, and he preached vote with your dollars. your choices matter. And, whether that's recycling or shutting the lights off when you leave the room, or when you go shopping, buying from brands that share your values, that do business in the way that you want the world to work, that matters, and you have power as a consumer. And so those were really the seeds of what is today Green Choice.
So at what point are you are you fed up with what you see around you in the food industry? Obviously, you have the influence of your parents from both sides, from the sustainability side of it and from the health side of it, and you're watching how things are going and having your own struggles as well.
Yeah.
As anyone with a gluten intolerance or sensitivity or full on celiac can attest, that it can be very difficult to navigate this world of food. It's more so now than even, like you said, back when you were working with it.
Yeah, the challenge has changed, right? When I first had allergies, the challenge was you didn't have options, you didn't have choice, and now you have the tyranny of choice, is what I call it, right?
Yeah.
It's information overwhelm. The average grocery store has between 30 and 35,000 unique products on the shelves. And you're trying to get in and out in 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Maybe you've got a kid who's with you, who's got, limited attention and time. You've got a budget you're trying to manage and stay on. You're thinking through the meals you want to cook. You've got tons of information. And then you've got all of these products, and you go into that cereal aisle or that protein bar aisle, and you have 1,000 choices, and they're all making claims to get you to buy. And so when I was a grad student in Boston, I was really experiencing this for the first time in a consistent way. Grocery shopping for myself, no longer a competitive athlete, thinking about food's impact on my health in a new way. I still had to turn the package over to read the ingredients. I still was trying to, I was now trying to do conscious shopping and vote with my dollars, make healthy choices. I'm trying to do nutrition math. It's way too much. It's just way too much for anyone, even myself with the upbringing I had, to navigate that decision efficiently. And I would often leave the grocery store feeling like I hadn't made the best choice, not that confident, feeling like the questions that I had Googled to find answers to only led to more questions that I didn't have time to answer. So that was really the catalyst to starting the business and saying, the data and technology is out there. There's incredible experts out there. If we can pull those two things together, we can make this a lot easier for myself and everybody around me. And I'll add one other note. I grew up with family and friends that have chronic illness and chronic disease. And you look at what is on our plate and how we eat, and it's clear that it's not working, and that there was a gap between a desire to be healthy and the choices and purchases that the people around me that I love so much were making. And that also really felt upsetting, and that there needed to be more resources, more tools to make these decisions easier, and not just to educate, but actually to nudge people to healthier options.
Yeah, what I find about the app, the Green Choice app, which I've had been working with it now for about a month, little over a month. And what I found with the app is that not only does it make it easier to, because, and we'll get to the score and how you guys score the foods, but it makes you find out more about the food, if that makes sense to you, because you'll see the score, and then there's four different parts of the score, and then it makes you want, oh, well, why has this one got this score and this one, has a little bit less score? So it makes you, I believe, it makes you take more ownership of what you're doing with your health and what you're picking. Is that
Mm.
one of the goals you had?
Yeah, we want to meet people where they're at. Uh, for us, the goal was always to make it easy to compare options and make the choices that you aspire to make based on the values and goals that you have. In practice, what that looks like for those who haven't used the app, and I love that you've been using it, Michael. I use it all the time, right? So just just to be clear, I've learned a lot over the years. I still use it to help me make these choices all the time. So the app is simple. You scan a food, it's barcode. You just open it up. You can scan a food. You can see an evidence-based food health score and sustainability score called a green score. It's from 1 to 100. It's color-coded traffic light style. So it goes green, yellow, orange, red. And whenever you scan an item that doesn't have maybe the best score, we'll show you alternatives that have higher scores available to you. And then we go one step further so that you can actually come in and plug in your own dietary preferences, diets, allergens, ingredient preferences, values that you might have, so that those recommendations are all filtered to those preferences. And then when you go scanning new foods, you'll immediately see green check, do they match those preferences? Red X, do they not? And it's all about meeting you where you're at, right? So some people, I'll tell you, Michael, some people see the score, that's enough. Some people don't even care about the score. They just want to be able to filter by those preferences that they have. They're trying to avoid artificial food dyes. They want to avoid added sugar. There's 60 plus names for added sugar that can show up on an ingredient list. And how are we supposed to know all of them? I don't know them, that's for sure. And so it makes it easy for you to be able to get a quick indicator, but transparency is also key. And how do you build trust with anyone? It's by being transparent, disclosing information that you wouldn't with somebody else, being honest. And that was core to our ethos. So we started the business as a public benefit company, which meant we had within our charter, within our founding principle as a company, a responsibility to foster essentially to foster a healthier, more just and sustainable world through daily purchases and through our daily food choices. So not only are we responsible to our profits, right, to our shareholders and increasing profits, we're also responsible to that. And profits can never come at the expense of that. So the reason I share that is to say, when you scan a food and you see a score, if you want to understand why it got the score it did, you should be able to do that easily. You should be able to dive in and see exactly what's behind that score, what led to it, and learn more if you'd like. And in an ideal world, you can learn, and you don't need to use GreenChoice all the time. What you'll find is it's still overwhelming, and that's why I use GreenChoice frequently, because there's always new products launching, there's always new considerations and new science. But yes, to your point, you can scan and you can click in, and the food green score is made up of 4 categories. So we look at nutritional quality, ingredient processing, ingredient safety, and climate footprint. And you can click into any one of those dimensions to see why that item got the score it did. So it gets a score to 1 to 100 on each one of those 4 categories. And then together, the green score is just the average of those 4. And if you really care about one of those areas more than the other, you can dive into that one area. So it is really about, 1, making it easy to compare options, 2, making it transparent so you can dive in and understand why you're seeing what you're seeing, and 3, giving you more information so that, yeah, you can learn and educate yourself and become a more empowered shopper with or without Green Choice.
I think that we all would agree that food is a primary driver of disease at this point. And like you said, there's so much information out there. I think what I really liked about the app was that the way it broke it down into the 4 different parts of the score was, I think, was well thought out, because I think in those 4 different categories, those are pretty much the 4 different categories that most people are concerned with when they're trying to make a buying choice. Do you agree with that?
I love that you say that, because those 4 categories were identified and designed very intentionally. We went out and interviewed a few thousand Americans to understand what they cared about most when they were navigating their food choices outside of price and taste. And that's how we landed on these dimensions, with one other big consideration. We also went and talked to our academic partners and the scientists to understand from their perspective what was most materially important when you were looking at food's healthfulness and sustainability. And then we merged the 2 together. And that is how we identified these 4 dimensions. What do shoppers care about? What does the science tell us? What do we have the data available to us to be able to accurately assess these foods' impacts on?
Well, that's a good point because the first question on someone's mind is when you give a score in the app is like, well, based on whose criteria, right? Because my criteria might be different than your criteria. Because, like you said, when you go on the app and then when you look into like the nutrition of it, it may get a little bit lower score because maybe it has a little bit, you know, 300 milligrams of sodium or something in it. Whereas for a person like me, I mean, that's not a big deal for me. If someone who's suffering with some high blood pressure or heart disease, that might be a score that they would be very important to them, right? So
Mhm.
how is that? Is that determined that way?
Right, so that's where the personalization comes in
Sure.
because with the score itself, if you're going to have a score that's equally assessing all items and generally simple and available to the public, not just in an app, but actually in a grocery store. And we do that as well. We actually power personalized experiences, much like the one you see on the app, personalized, transparent experiences for grocery stores. So when you go into your grocery store, you can see the score on the shelf and a QR code you can scan to get that additional information on the item, as well as healthy recommended alternatives. Now, in order to do that, we need one standard system for scoring. And then we need a personalization layer. And the personalization comes in the form right now of these dietary and ingredient health preferences that you can set as filters. And the score, the personalization comes in the ability for you to dive into it and compare an item across different category scores. For example, I care about food processing a lot. I'm going to compare items food processing score more than I might compare their nutritional quality score, for example. Um, that level of transparency is really critical. And then you asked a second question, which was whose criteria. And so our approach was in working with our academic partners and nutrition and environmental and data scientists, both on our team and in partnership with the academics, we identified a series of science based industry standards that we were going to use to guide how we scored items so that we weren't going to invent our own standards. Our work is in actually taking those existing guidelines and standards and turning them into a score that's easy to use and scaling it across 1 million plus foods that are available to shoppers across the country. And so, depending on the score, the standard varies. So, for example, if you look at that nutrition score, it's based on USDA dietary guidelines and nutrients of concern and World Health Organization inputs. And then if you look at the food processing score, it's based on the Nova Food classification, which is actually a system developed by researchers out of Brazil, but it's now the most widely recognized guide for evaluating a food's level of processing. But if you look at highly processed foods, that standard has some gaps. And so that's where we look to the World Health Organization to inform how we assess ultra processed foods. So each score has its own standard that we follow. And then we have a science advisory board that reviews those standards on a quarterly basis and evaluates areas that we need to update or to change or look to new science.
No, I appreciate you going through that because that it shows that you guys had a well-rounded approach to this. Because I think everyone wants to have what we call science-backed information now. That's kind of a buzzword for everyone, I
For
think.
sure. Yeah.
But there is a reason why some things hold up through the test of time is because they have been proven over the test of time, right? So I love that you guys went into that depth. One question I have that you just kind of piqued my interest was, do I have can I scan the barcode on the shelf and I don't have to scan the actual package, or do I still have to scan the package?
You can do both.
Okay.
So more and
So I'm taking
more,
off all these products off the
yeah,
and while I'm in the store, I just keep pulling stuff off and
I would encourage you next time you're at the grocery store, try just taking the phone out and pointing it at the shelf tag. If you see a barcode on that shelf tag, it doesn't need a number or anything. If you see a barcode on that shelf tag, try just pointing the app at it. I'm amazed at how far away you can be and still get a result. So I'll be a couple feet from the shelf and I'll just point, and I just get results. So I won't even take items off the shelf now.
Oh, that makes it a lot easier because we were looking at some cereal, and I'm gluten free as well. And so I just, kept grabbing this box of all the gluten-free brands that are out there and organic. We buy pretty much
Yep.
all organic. And so that makes it a lot easier. I don't have to pick up every single box. That'll save me time in the store for sure.
Totally, totally. And what we're working on, Michael, is depending on where you live, we're working with more and more grocery stores to get this information accessible right on the shelf so you don't even need to use the app. So we're now powering, as I was describing before, licenses and integrations for retailers so that you can see the green score right on the shelf, color coded traffic light style, just like you do when you scan the item, right on the shelf tag, the price tag, right next to the price, you see the score. And there's a QR code that if you want, you can scan with your phone camera to get all the info that you would in the app.
Wow, that would be, yeah. That's so you're going because one of my questions was to ask you is what what obviously this helps the consumer greatly. How does it help the grocer?
Yeah. Well, so
So,
we just started to touch on that, which is we believe doing good is good business. And especially right now, while more consumers than ever in my life certainly care about what is in their food and are trying to make healthier choices for themselves and their families and demanding transparency and very skeptical of brands' claims and what they're being told about health. And so, if you as a retailer take this seriously, then it means you need to make an experience, a shopping journey that is transparent and makes it easy for your customer to get the information they want and make the choices that they want and find the items that meet the preferences that they have. And so that's the conversation we're having with grocery stores. And it means when I go onto said grocer's app, if I'm shopping online or I'm using their mobile app for loyalty, I should be able to set my dietary preferences. I should be able to say, I don't want foods with artificial preservatives. I want vegan foods or I want low sodium foods and be able to see an accurate selection of products at that store that meet those preferences. And we go one step further. If you want to make it easy for people to make healthy choices, then it's your responsibility, retailer, to guide them and to work with a partner like GreenChoice to power a food health score that makes it easy to compare options across categories, across product types. And when you do that, you can actually drive lift in better for you items. And so the good for us as a people story becomes also a good for business story when we're able to drive measurable lift in healthier items in a store. And we're measuring that and we're finding that we can.
yeah, and I think that's everyone now is wanting to I think I agree with you that now more than ever, I think people are really starting to really look into taking matters into their own hands and their health into their own hands. And they're really starting to be a little bit more discerning about the products right now. And I think
Mm,
if you get grocers into that, people obviously are going to gravitate towards the grocer that is working with them as a team, right? Because everyone does it now, right? You have we have 3 grocery stores in town here. We we go to one for most of it, and then we go to the other one for a couple of other items, but we never go to the 3rd one because we just don't like the food there. So I
mm,
think people are doing that already, so I agree with you. I think the grocer, if they could have that right already at hand, I think that would help them greatly and attract more shoppers.
100%. I'll give you a fascinating insight here. GLP-1 use. So weight loss drugs. These GLP-1 drugs growing like wildfire and are really helping people curb weight gain and find success in weight loss who have never had it before, who have not been able to find weight loss before. What grocers are realizing, because grocers in many cases have pharmacies, they're actually able to see baskets, grocery carts change of GLP-1 users. The average GLP-1 user spends less. I've seen stats as much as 20% less on groceries once they start taking a GLP-1 weight loss drug. But when they work with a dietitian as part of their program, they actually spend more. It's
Really?
interesting. And, you know, I believe this is because at first pass, you have less hunger, you're more easily satiated, you don't need as many foods, you're just going to buy less of the foods you used to buy. But then there becomes new needs, new nutritional needs. Now, because you're consuming less calories, you need higher nutrient density foods, higher
Thank
fiber,
you.
higher protein foods. You're trying to make you're interested in making healthier choices. I mean, you've already established that because you're taking a drug, you're injecting yourself to be healthier.
Right.
When you pair them with a dietitian, they now have a resource who is qualified in guiding them to healthier options and can take them through a store and show them all the choices they do have in front of them and the ways that they can meet their nutritional needs. And so they end up spending more.
Yeah, when I coach clients, it's the same actual philosophy is that if you're going to be eating less calories, then you're going to want much more nutrients in that because you're eating less food. You don't want to eat less food and have it be junk food because now you're not going to be as nutrient dense. So you're going to have to really, really tune in to like what foods are going to give me the most bang for my buck if I'm going to be eating way less calories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, same.
Absolutely.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
amazing. In this app, I just want to let everyone who's listening to the podcast, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a companion video of this on my own, and I'm going to actually scroll through my app on the screen and kind of show people how to go through the app and set up all the things that I'm setting up. And
Cool.
I think that'll
That's
be very
awesome.
helpful for the people listening to podcasts. Look for that coming up. I'll do that within the next week or so. But you can go in here and filter your search. So you can choose like your allergies, and you can just it's just slider controls on it. No soy, no shellfish, no tree nuts, and you can do that for sustainability as well. If you want minimally processed foods, you want 100% organic ingredients, you can do that for let's see, 6 different types of parameters here. So it really gives you a wide range of really setting it up for yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I think in total it's over 70 different preferences that you can pick from. You
Sure.
know, so you gave some great examples, and it is about build your profile. It's very easy to update and change as that may change on your journey.
Yeah, and
And
it's pretty detailed in here. I mean, you can choose no nitrates. I mean, you don't see that in any other app, at all. I mean, that is
yeah,
that is really, really that's deeply and highly specific for people.
yeah,
Which
and a
once you set up
little,
all these parameters and preferences, then every time you're scanning, it's gonna have that
yeah,
in its brain, yeah.
it's immediately going to show you green check, it matches your preferences, or red X, it doesn't. And whatever preference it doesn't match is going to get a red X. So immediately on scan, you will know what it conflicts with. And if you're like me, some of your preferences might be non-negotiables, and some of them you might be open to buying a purchase that conflicts with it every once in a while, depending on what that product is, right? I'm not going to buy anything with almonds, period. It'll kill me, right? So
Yeah.
that one is non-negotiable. But something like no added sugar or something like high protein, I don't need high protein in every item I get, so sometimes that's okay. Or, maybe I'm okay with having a small amount of added sugar or some added sugar depending on that product type. So you'll quickly find the way to use it to your benefit and what works for you.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did. We we looked at items, and then if it had a little bit of lower score, we kind of dug into the nutrition side of it, which is what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, well, it has a little bit of added sugar. Well, for me, that's not a big deal for me. So, but for the other person, it might be, and they can dig into that. The other thing that I spoke to you earlier was that one thing that this is my biggest thing that I loved about the app that I never saw on any other app, and I've downloaded 3 or 4 of them in the past couple of years, is that it shows foods that are generally heavily sprayed with chemicals and pesticides. And that was one of the categories in there that shows you, because that stuck out to me because I don't think any other
Mm.
app does that.
Not that I know of, no.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's a great thing, because as we talk about the gluten sensitivity, what we're finding out more now is that a lot of times it is what's sprayed on the product. So you may not really truly be sensitive to wheat. You may be sensitive to what they're spraying on the wheat.
Yeah. Yeah, the presence of, for example, glyphosate in our
Yeah.
food supply is pretty astounding. And I actually should say, um, I will give a very willing and happy shout out to Environmental Working Group, to EWG, who
Oh, yeah.
has done some work, some really great work in studying pesticide and herbicide residues on food. And they do have a food scanner app. Um, so I actually want to acknowledge that as well. They will look at pesticide and herbicides. What you'll find is that they've, I think, looked at around 150,000 foods, and we have now over 800,000 in the app. And certainly, we're looking at other dimensions as well, as we've talked about. So I think what you'll find in the Green Choice app is a unique combination of health dimensions and personalization for a very large number of products. But I would be remiss not to give props where props are due when it comes to this work, and EWG has done some great work.
Oh, yeah, EWG is a great website. I've utilized that resource many, 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 many times, and I'm on the
Yeah,
email list. I get their
yeah.
newsletters and stuff. So, do you guys
Yeah,
have a
and they've got a
newsletter as
great
well?
list. They've got a great list for the Dirty Dozen
Yes.
and the Clean
Yeah.
15, looking
Yep.
at, what really just simplifying the produce section, and
Yeah.
where if you're not going to purchase organic everything, what would really be the highest bang for your buck when it comes to spending a little bit more on organic foods, given what pesticide and herbicide residues you're likely going to be exposed to when shopping produce. So I think that's a great resource I would recommend people check out. You
Yeah, and
just
they
asked me a
update that
question I missed.
regularly.
Yeah, they do.
I think they just updated it with blueberries, and blueberries got moved into the Dirty Dozen, I believe.
Mm.
Excellent, excellent. Well, why don't you just wrap up here, and the app was free, if I remember. Yeah, I think I
The app's
downloaded it for free.
completely free, and there's
Yeah.
no paid to play part. It's totally free.
Yeah, it's fully functional. Every single option you have in the app is completely available to you when you download it. And yeah, why don't you just let us know where we can find you on the web and where they can download the app. I'll put all everything that you mentioned. I'll put that in the description below as well.
Yeah. Let me leave you with one stat as well
Yeah, yeah. I love
before I share
stats,
that
dude.
information. All right. Well, maybe we'll have another conversation in the future. I can bring my stat bag because we've got a lot of stats to share. So now, having analyzed so many foods, we recently were looking at the presence of highly processed foods in our food supply, and looking across 660,000 plus foods sold across the 25 largest national and regional retailers in the US. We found that 70% of foods, well, let me actually break this down. I'm going to give you a different stat. I'll leave that one for later.
Okay.
We looked at retailers. We looked at retailers' product catalogs, and we compared them for the presence of highly processed foods. And you spoke about 3 stores in your community, 2 of which you shop at, 1 of which you don't, dependent on what products are available and how they meet your needs. And the reality is not every grocery store is providing that same selection. Right? We know that well. If you grocery shop, you know that well. Well, here's an interesting takeaway from our analysis of foods processing levels. If you look at natural retailers like a Whole Foods or a Sprouts, about 15% of their catalog is highly processed on average. If you look at conventional retailers, like a Kroger and Albertsons, 40%, 35 to 40% of their catalog is highly processed. So you're 3 to 3.5 times more likely to encounter highly processed foods if you're shopping at a conventional retailer on average than if you're shopping at a natural retailer. Now, many of us cannot afford to shop at a Whole Foods or a Sprouts all the time or at all. And many of us don't have access to those retailers. But it's important to understand the inequity there and the reality that you have a more challenging task ahead of you navigating the average grocery store than somebody who has access and the means to spend their dollars at a high-end natural food store. And GreenChoice is one way, one of your tools that you can take into that store to help you navigate it. Because on the flip side, those conventional retailers still carry 30% of their catalog is still minimally processed. And then the rest is somewhere in the middle. And so you still have a lot of choice and you still have a lot of agency to vote with your dollars to make healthier choices. So I'll leave you with that and say, if you want to learn more, if you want to play with the GreenChoice app, you can look it up, GreenChoice Food Scanner in your app store. It's completely free to use. Greenchoice.co is our website with a lot more information on our work and what we do. And GreenChoice PBC on all social media channels. We're putting out content all the time using the app, stats like this, and tips for grocery shopping.
Excellent, excellent. Great information. Love the app, and we'll continue to promote it as well. So appreciate you, Galen, for coming on the show, and we appreciate your time.